Well, first of all, thank you all for having me. Again, this is, I think, probably several times we've been together, and I appreciate it very much, the opportunity to come in and talk. Basically just say that I've incredibly enjoyed the last 3 years of representing this area. Certainly the new district that probably is interesting for people to know about after redistricting is fairly new and fairly different. The District 6 now that I will be running for covers all of St. Johns County, all of Putnam County, all of Flagler County, and all of, or half of Volusia County. The district no longer includes any of Nassau County or Duval County. So, and I think the district was drawn under the new guidelines from the Constitution on the basis of trying to be compact and trying to keep districts as much as possible within the boundaries of county and municipal lines. And so this district will do that. Having said that, St. Johns County will actually, in terms of delegation members representing them in Tallahassee, will actually go from 6 to 3 members, 1 senator and 2 House members, where in the past we had 3 House members and 3 senators representing parts of St. Johns County. I think one of the biggest losses for me in terms of the future will be the loss of Bill Proctor. I mean, Bill Proctor, I know we had some issues, and you guys had some discussions about certain things, but he truly is a well-respected person in the halls of Tallahassee, and certainly in the House of Representatives, and added a lot to the conversations on higher education particularly. So we'll miss Bill, but I'm looking forward to this term. By the way it came out based on a lottery is a 2-year term, and so after the 2-year term, whoever would be the successful person would be entitled to run in for a 4-year term. So I'm excited about it. We've got new leadership in Tallahassee under incoming President Don Gates, who is from the Panhandle area and actually lives in Niceville, Florida. A business guy with background in healthcare, hospice work, businesses. He was a school board member, a school board superintendent in Okaloosa County, so he'll bring a lot of ideas to the education forefront. I expect to be, I think, I will be significantly involved in his leadership team again for the next 2 years. I know what I am going to be, but I don't want to say that at this point in time. But off the record, can I do? Okay, well, I'm not going to say that, but I think I'm going to be in a position to continue to help out. I was happy last year when we were able to get some things in the budget for the for downtown, for the historical buildings, the $2.5 million for the government house, the money for the Flagler College solarium. I think 9B is another area where I think we're working on and making progress with the Department of Transportation. And we certainly know, I know firsthand that we have one of the best school district in the state of Florida, and whatever we can do to enhance that, working with Superintendent Joyner and the teachers, and I felt like a really good relationship with the president of the teachers union this past year. She brought over her name is Dawn Chapman, if you all don't know her, every week, and I met her last year, probably I don't know, end of the year. She brought a group of teachers in to visit me, and we had a very, very candid, open discussion about a lot of issues. And I invited her to come back to Tallahassee as often as she could. So she took me up on it, and every single week she brought a group of different teachers, 3 or 4 different teachers, to Tallahassee, and she met with me, Audrey Gibson, Bill Proctor, whoever else was she could see, and we had a great time. We had a great time every single week. I was able to do a resolution on the floor of the Senate honoring St. Johns County as the best school district in the state, and she and Bill and Judge Joyner joined me on the floor, and we were able to do that. As I look ahead, and then we won't get into the details, but you guys can ask questions. I mean, the things that are going to, we obviously don't know from now to March what the issues are going to be necessarily. A lot will have to depend frankly, the outcome of the presidential election, particularly in healthcare, the Medicaid program, and the impact it may have on our budget. We got some good news yesterday from the budget estimating conference that we are actually looking a little bit better this year than we have in the past. As I said, I think to you, Ron, when you came in, that the issue there, of course, whether or not it's going to be a good year or not good year, is the lawsuit that will be pending before the Supreme Court on the 3% requirement for employees in their pension plans. If we lose that, the state loses that, then that would certainly have an impact on the good news that we've had. But we're planning on not losing that, and we're planning on moving ahead and hopefully being able to meet the needs of the state of Florida with our budget this year. I think those are the major things. Obviously, we're going to continue to look at areas where we can save money for taxpayers, as we did last year. I think in the PIP, personal injury protection part of our automobile insurance thing, it looks like that's going to have an impact, and we're going to have some rate filings toward the end of the year that actually reduce the cost of automobile insurance, which impacts most everybody.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I thought what I was reading was that it wouldn't lower premiums, it would lower the increases of premiums.
Well, if it's lower rate filings, I mean, I think if they were planning, I don't know what their plans were. I mean, that you may know, but I don't. But I mean, if their plans was to increase 15% and they only increased 7%, bottom line is, you know, we think there's going to be a savings, ultimate savings to consumers. And we put a mechanism in the bill that actually requires them to show us, you know, what the rates would be and how they would impact, so that it's just not an open-ended type of thing. The other thing, I guess, that continues to, I get questions, a lot of questions about. We've been blessed again this year by not having another hurricane, at least a direct hit that we've had. But Citizens is still expanding. It has, and you know, I don't know there's a silver bullet for that. We simply have got to figure out a way to get the private sector a little bit more engaged in that. I mean, they're insuring about 1,400,000 people now in the state of Florida, the largest property insurer in the state. And, you know, we've got to make sure the rates are competitive, that we're not subsidizing, allowing people who live in the inner parts of the state to subsidize some of us who live on the ocean. I mean, it's a tough issue, and it's not going to be solved overnight, but it still remains a big issue, and one we'll have to deal with. Governor Scott is continuing to work on jobs. He's traveling around the country, outside the country, trying to encourage businesses to come to the state of Florida. You know, we'll see how that goes over the next year and into 2013. But that's kind of an overview of where we are and where I am. I'm excited about the opportunity to hopefully serve again, and we'll see what happens the next 2 years if I'm reelected.
Let me start with a couple of questions about policy. Proctor, Renuart, everybody was running against Renuart, and the two people who were running in the South District in St. John's all talk about Medicaid as the packing into the budget, and if we don't do something, it's going to be, you know, the sky's going to fall. And they also argue if you want more money for education, it's going to have to come, have to reduce the cost of Medicaid. I would assume that's going to be a real big issue in the next session. What's likely to happen?
Well, here you probably read that Governor Scott has come out and said, you know, we're not going to follow the Affordable Health Care Act, and we're not going to expand Medicaid. That's where he is. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of where the position of I want to see the facts. I want to see the numbers. What would it actually cost the state over the next several years to actually expand the Medicaid program? We still have a large number of people uninsured, no question about it. We all know the federal government pays for that up front the first several years, and then it goes to 90%, and then who knows? I think a lot of that will depend on the outcome of this election. I mean, if Romney's elected, I think there'll be some probably major changes in the Affordable Health Care Act, and whether or not we would want to go forward on that at that point, I don't know. My point is, though, I want to see the numbers, really what the impact on the state budget would be, how many more people would we insure, and what is the potential for further expansion and impacts on our budget. The good news is, as we said, looks like things are trending better in our budget. And if they're trending better, you know, I don't mean that we ought to spend every single dollar. You know, last year we put $1 billion, quote unquote, new dollars into education over the previous year. And of course, everybody understands we're catching back up because we had to tighten belts over the last 2 or 3 years. But that's progress, and I think that's a good thing. I don't believe in just putting money in a program just to put it in there because we have it. If there's a good, and by the way, before we even get to that part of Medicaid, you know, we still have a waiver pending in HHS on the plan that we adopted in 2010 that basically goes to a managed care concept that creates, we believe, some real legitimate savings in delivering the services in managed care. Governor Romney's plan for Medicaid, and I've talked to him personally about it, would be to try to basically block grant the amount of money we get for Medicaid with a possible trigger mechanism on a per year increase based on population growth and a few other factors. But basically have that money come to the states and let the states decide and design the best possible plan for delivering Medicaid services. So there are a lot of options out there. Governor Scott, I think, you know, from a political perspective or where he is, he doesn't believe in you know, allowing the government to dictate to us whether we should take money or not take money, and he's shown that in the high-speed rail and a few other things. But I want to look at the numbers and see exactly where we are, and I think those numbers are being developed now.
Corporate tax cut, government wants us.
I think if we have a continued growth in our economy and we can show a nexus between cutting corporate taxes and attracting businesses to the state of Florida or allowing business to expand, then it's worthy of consideration. It's a, you know, the most evil tax, in my opinion, we ever had in the state of Florida was the intangibles tax, and I worked hard to get rid of that when I was in the House along with Governor Bush. Corporate tax, we still have a high rate of corporate taxation. We lowered it a little bit last year, where 50,000 businesses basically were not going to have to pay it around the state. But I think it's still something. If the numbers reflect it, Governor Scott's basic formula is return on investment, and for just about everything. If we're getting a return on investment, in other words, if by taking that money out, we're actually attracting more jobs, more businesses that are expanding and relocating to Florida, then I think it's worthy of considering it, continuing.
Okay. Talking about jobs, Governor has made that, it sounds like an old Ford ad, jobs are job one. And yet the employment in Florida is
still pretty high, yeah, unemployment rate.
Unemployment's high, but the private sector job creation is being more than offset by the public sector job loss. So at least this year's not been a very good year for the governor. I want to ask specifically about this area. There seem to be two economic drivers for this area in addition to tourism. One is the port of Jacksonville,
Mm-hmm.
and the other is the medical community.
Mm-hmm. No doubt about it.
When I first got here, and I got here in 2004, and Bill Proctor was first running his first term, he kept talking about they were having trouble getting physicians to go to the med school at the University of Florida because it was too far away from the big teaching hospitals, and they were talking about building something here as an annex for the med school so they'd be closer to the research hospitals in Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm.
That's gone away. Is there anything like that in the...
Well, you know, the concept of the Florida State University College of Medicine, which I know a little bit about, is one to not have a teaching hospital attached to the university. And they have been able to locate in specific urban areas relationships with major hospitals. Halifax is probably the closest to here, and it's been an incredibly successful model where the kids, you know, come in the first 2 years, they stay in Tallahassee, they get their basic sciences and all those things out of the way, and then they go out and they're farmed out to one of the other 7 or 8 I think they have now around the state, and that's been incredibly successful. I know that, I don't know if you know a guy by the name of Dr. Yank Coble, and he's a professor at the University of North Florida. He is the past president of the Duval County Medical Society, Florida Medical Association, American Medical Association, and the World Medical Association. Extraordinarily talented guy, and I forget the name of the department, it's some fancy world healthcare. He has a healthcare forum every year for everything in North Florida. And one of the concepts that he's pushed and they pushed is why not, with all the medical assets that we have in North Florida, get a medical school in there, either an adjunct of the University of Florida, or perhaps even a medical school associated with the University of North Florida. I think that's I think medical schools bring a lot of synergy. You look at what's going on in Orlando, they got a medical school, and around that medical school there's a VA hospital, there's Nemours, there are other medical types of things, research programs, the Burnham Institute. All of those are kind of centerizing around the medical school. One of the great assets we have in North Florida, the University Hospital and its programs, the trauma center they have there, the kind of experience they have, the Mayo programs. If we could ever get all that working together, I think we could create a medical school of some kind. And create the synergies in the jobs.
The proposal wasn't to create a med school here, it was to have an annex with the University of Florida, simply
The University of Florida would probably prefer that, I'm sure.
Yeah, but that was, but is there anything like that? Is there anything for this kind of your district on health care?
I don't know there's a possibility of doing that here in St. Augustine, but I certainly think it would have an impact on St. Augustine if it even was in Jacksonville. I think there'd still be some assets there. As far as the port is concerned, I mean, everybody, I don't know anybody who is not understands that the expansion of our port in Jacksonville would energize a lot of this area. And if we can get the transportation corridors in and out to it, I think it makes a big difference. And the new guy that's at the Jacksonville port's a guy by the name of Paul Anderson, and I think he's doing a great job. And we all get it. I mean, we know the governor, I think, led the charge to expand and create some new dollars for the port in Miami. He's been to the port in Jacksonville a number of times, and I think that we're going to continue to work on trying to feed more dollars into that and get the Panamax stuff going so that we can get the big ships in and create the kind of synergy that we do. The other thing, Northrop Grumman to me is the biggest, asset, one of the biggest assets we have. Every time I go there, I'm overwhelmed by the kinds of contracts they're getting, the jobs that they've created, and if we can do anything to keep them here, make sure they're happy and expand, we need to be doing that.
They actually are expanding.
Yeah.
What they're doing now is, someone came in, picture of a plane that they're rebuilding jets for Taiwan, and they're bubble wrapping them, putting them in a barge, taking them up to Jackson. They don't want anyone to know because it's Taiwan. So
it's every time I go there, I'm fascinated by it. It's a great asset to us.
The Bill Proctor is a big fan of increasing the cost of tuition to support higher education. Governors wasn't quite as excited about it. What's going to happen with that?
I think it'll be back again. I think we're going to do some more education on the governor. Look, I understand nobody wants to pay more to go to your university systems, but if we're going to have world-class universities, University of Florida, Florida State, University of South Florida, Central Florida, whichever one you want to pick or groups of them, there's no question. I don't know that we could sustain that by just state assistance. I think we've got to ask the folks that are going there to pay a little more. And frankly, we still have one of the lowest tuition rates in the country for our public universities. That is a good deal. It really is. It continues to be a good deal. And but on the other hand, Eric Barron, who is the president of Florida State University, will tell you that just about every month he's getting one of his professors, cannibalized by some other university who wants to pay him a little bit more money, And so, I think that's, to me, if we're going to have good research institutions, good undergraduate programs, core doctoral programs that really meet the needs of the state of Florida in the STEM areas particularly, we've got to ask, we got to do a little bit more. Now, this is not a good time, no question about it. The economy's down, and people are concerned, everybody's concerned. But our universities, if we want to maintain them at the highest level we can, I don't see how we sustain that by just state assistance. I think we've got to ask a little bit more. University of North Carolina, Penn State, but and they have great academic programs, and they do that.
Not talking football.
No, we're talking academics.
I did a series of 4 of us for the primaries, and I had to research the questions for the House candidates. So I went and spoke to elected officials and to administrators in the county and the city and the school board. And what surprised me was, which I hadn't expected to hear, was the disconnect between these people, all Republicans, and where they see the legislature heading. And I give you some examples.
Okay.
They were upset about growth management. There are 5,000 homes. It turned out later that Doug, forget his name, who lost the Democratic primary for that district, said that 15,000. 15,000 homes approved in Palm Coast. When it had been 5,000, St. Johns County had opposed it under the Growth Management Act. Under the changes, they don't have any say in that.
County commission done?
And the county commission is no longer able to oppose, they can do it in their own county, but they can't oppose it on their border, which is a big concern in Hastings, because they're right on the Putnam County line, and a concern down there. So I heard angst about that. If you want to have your ear pulled in great directions, bring up amendments 4 and 8 to people. They're not very popular with the Republicans. You ever heard of any people complaining about unfunded mandates? You know, that comes
A
up
little
all the
bit.
time.
Every other day.
And pay for performance. A lot of the school system just doesn't think it's going to work. They think it's going to cost them a lot of money. You've heard about charter schools, and one of the candidates, Mike Davis, ran the argument that just as long as it's fair, as long as they have the same rules that the public schools have. So you hear all this stuff. So one of the candidates said, it was Davis, the guy who lost, he said, well, there's always a disconnect because they have a different agenda in Tallahassee. But how do you bridge that gap? I mean, I was surprised, all these Republicans so irritated with what they see the legislature doing.
Well, I mean, I think in all of those things, there are differing views. I mean, I would say, you heard from one segment, but I hear from other people too, who feel just as passionately that we ought to have high-performing schools that are accountable, and we ought to pay teachers that are performing. One example. I hear from people who basically say, under the old growth management law, things were stifled. In order to develop a piece of property, you had to go through so many hoops and so many costs, and there were so many people who could intervene in the process that the expense of developing a piece of property got to be enormous. So my view is they're both sides of that. I mean, I think that I accept what you said and what you heard, but I also would hope you would hear from me that somebody who goes out and campaigns and heck, I've had to campaign every 2 years, more than every 2 years.
Lucky guy.
I'm hearing from some of these other folks too, and I still have the faith that trying to do less, but trying to let the local level do more. And I know that's counterintuitive on the teacher thing, but certainly on the development thing, to me, those are regional issues, and they ought to be more regional. And maybe we need to look at that and make it a more regional approach, given just what you said, because county lines do blur when it comes to those kinds of developments and the impacts that they have on outside counties. That maybe we ought to look at a more regional thing. Legislature responds to sometimes in a knee-jerk way, and sometimes they'll go too far and then they'll come back. And so maybe that's one of those areas that we can take another look at. I think the pay for performance, it's a work in progress, no question about it. But if you believe in the concept of rewarding the best teachers who are in the classrooms and making sure we can retain those teachers, I think that concept has some validity. Now, can we make it work? I hope we can. I hope we can reward really good teachers and make sure they stay there. I hope we can make a balance between the environment and our developers and the impacts they have. So all of the legislatures, I'm first to tell you, is not a perfect place to establish policy. I don't ever tell you that it is, but it is what we have. The people who elect the people who go there generally know, because of the work that you all do and others and the candidates do, what the candidates stand for, and that's the process we have. There is a disconnect clearly sometimes between local governments and what goes on at the state level, no question about it.
I'll bring up your friend Charlie Crist. I know you have strong views in him. I did not listen to his speech.
He's a
last
cartoon
night.
character. That's all he is.
But but I did read news reports of what he said last night. And
He said his friend Jeb Bush was something about that, which I'm sure Jeb just absolutely, that just like a knife in the belly to him. Go ahead, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt your question.
Basically,
Sorry.
as I understood, his main comment was that the Republican Party has moved so far to the right as to be pushing out moderates. So I'd like to get your comment on that.
Well, I mean, Charlie Crist is what he is. I mean, you have to take that comment for where it's coming from. I mean, here's a guy who ran for governor, who ran for Florida Senate, ran for Education Commissioner, ran for Attorney General, and ran for governor as a Republican, as a quote-unquote conservative Republican, who believed in less taxes. He was obviously believed in, he was pro-life, he professed to be pro-life. All of those fundamental things that most Republicans agree. Here now he's complete 180 degrees. So I mean, I don't know whether you can believe the guy or not believe the guy. I think he's lost all credibility, would be my.
Okay, I understand.
And he may run for governor. I mean, which I hope he does. I've said that publicly.
I read what you wrote. The Tampa Bay Times said about
convention.
But the question is not about him, but about the issue.
Oh, about whether the party.
Is whether the party's moved so far to the right, it's knocking out moderates and.
No, I don't think we're knocking out moderates. I think we still have. You look at the Florida Senate, and you look at the couple examples from last year. The bill I referenced to you, the trigger bill, which would have empowered parents to, in the low performing schools. It was defeated on a 20-20 vote. We have 28 Republicans in the Florida Senate when they voted last year. So I think there's still room for that kind of moderate thing. But would I prefer more conservatives and more business-oriented folks in the Senate? Absolutely, no question about it. But I still think there's room for, and the state's diverse. This is a very diverse state. You look around at, particularly in the Orlando area, how the demography is changing. There are certainly in South Florida, and then maybe in the Tampa Bay, St. Pete area. I mean, there clearly is a diverse state. And so I think Charlie Crist left the party for personal ambition and not for any other reason.
Okay. I'm going to ask one question and then turn to others. Who's going to win the state of Florida in the presidential election?
Governor Romney's going to win.
Right now he's behind.
He's going to win.
And how's he going to do that? Downstate is
by downstate in the I-4 corridor and a good turnout here in North Florida in the Panhandle. Counter the Broward County, Palm Beach County area. We're going to win by 1 or 2 percentage points. So.
Okay.
Margo, Peter.
You saw in the paper a few days ago that the county has sued the.
I did.
I wondered what you.
Well, I was involved in that. I worked
How
with.
can they get some action that's not unfair?
Well,
everything they do, it seems unfair to them.
It does. Jerry is I say this. He's worked real hard on it. And I know he feels a lot of pain from what's going on. There is reason to believe, though, that there were some significant errors in the Medicaid program and the way it was handled and billed and all that. When he first brought, and I met with he and the county manager, we had, of course, I knew about the bill, knew about what was going on. I then, I took for what they said as, their position, and I advocated for it with the department, Agency for Healthcare Administration. They actually came over, had an extensive meeting with them, went through a lot of the files. I brought it as high as the governor's office to Adam Hollingsworth, and finally they reduced the number somewhat. I think it was reduced somewhat significantly, but not enough for them. And then so I told Jerry, I said, look, here's under the law, here's your alternative. And that is to sue the state through an administrative suit. It's not like a typical civil lawsuit. It's through an administrative law judge. Make your case. If your evidence shows that these are invalid claims that they're making, I promised him that I would do one thing, and I don't know whether I can do it or not. But if they're successful, I will go in not only and get, help them get the money back if they've paid any, but pay for their attorney's fees also. I'll do some kind of budget appropriation or something like that. Because if they're right, they ought to be rewarded for it. But if they're, this is the only way under the system now to determine whether who's right or who's wrong. I hope they're right. I hope they're right, because I know $750 million is a lot of money. And it's not 750, 750,000. I mean, yeah. So I hope they're right. But they seem to. There are other counties who feel equally as oppressed by it, but maybe it'll work out in that way. But I'm going to continue to work with them. I've talked to Adam Hollingsworth about it, again, Governor's Chief of Staff, Agency for Healthcare. Our staff was heavily involved in it. We had our Senate staff working on it with them and talking to them. I think he would agree that we did what we could do. And then I suggested at the end, that I recommended that they sue the state, or at least file an administrative lawsuit, and then see where we go from there.
Thank you. You wonder about what's going on outside the
He's a tough guy. He's very passionate about. They believe that they're right.
They keep such careful records. They can prove all these addresses that they're coming in are just bogus. And
If they can prove it, then let's get it done, because they obviously, it didn't satisfy the state in terms of their review of it. I'm not saying the state's right or wrong, and I'm not saying Jerry's right or wrong, but let's find an independent person to take a look at it. And if they're right, I'm going to go to bat for them 100% to make sure that they're held harmless in terms of the costs and expenses that they've incurred.
Okay. I want to go back to the charter schools and the PICO money. The district is saying now we need got to build more schools, and we lost the money. So
some school districts, and there are a couple options out there. Some school districts are not having the growth that we're having, so they don't need the PICO money. And the distributions in the past have been kind of general, and so if and we all know we've got less PICO money than we've had based upon the kind of tax revenue that drives PICO. And so one idea is to look at the state and look at the needs of individual areas, and where there aren't needs in PICO, to transfer those dollars to the places where there are needs. The other idea that, of course, the governor created this is a PICO study commission, and I'm hoping they'll come back with some ideas that will give us a chance to make some changes. Clearly, we can't sustain building schools, universities, et cetera, under the current system we have. We've got to figure it out. It's either we got to add more general revenue, or we've got to find another source, if you will, for supplying those dollars for construction.
Well, but all of them now go to charter schools or went to charter schools.
Yeah, some of it's gone to charter, but charter schools, charter schools are quote unquote public schools.
I understand that, but
and they
isn't there a middle ground? I mean, can you say, okay?
Yeah. But still, the public schools get the 2% of the 2 mil levy. They can see. I mean, there are other ways that they can go to the taxpayers. They can ask for different sources, whereas charter schools can't do that. And again, I'm not advocating that we have charter schools in St. Johns County or anyplace else, but charter schools are part of the law. They are recognized, and once they're created, they have to operate too. And so some people have decided that we're going to put some PICO money in them. That was a one or two time deal. I don't know that it'll happen again. I'm more interested in the future and how we fund PICO overall, and we've got to come up with some solutions.
So that's the answer, and then come up with a distribution plan that levels the playing.
Levels, but creates. I mean, we got some counties that are actually losing kids. I mean, believe it or not. I mean, they're not gaining new kids; they're losing kids. And
well, this county isn't.
No, I know that, but Duval County, I don't know. They're probably not 25,000 more kids going to public school in Duval County than when I went to public schools. I mean, that's how little growth they've had in Duval County.
That's true. It's right up there in the northeast and northwest.
When I was years ago, when I was on the Clay County School Board, we were the fastest growing school district in the state of Florida at one time. We were building 1 or 2 schools a year, or having to.
Okay. Are we gonna get the state sales tax applied to online out-of-state retailers?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know
Do you think it should?
Do I think it should? I'm not anxious to create any new taxes right now for anybody.
All right. Well, you know the argument from the Retail
I
Federation
know that argument for
and
retail.
Associated Industries, everything.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
And
Big
but
boxes
also
have
know-
to pay for
I
everything.
know a lot of parents and a lot of people who go online now to shop for their kids, and where it would be a burden to them too. So, I mean, I think we need to look at it. The federal government, if there could be some consistency in how we do it, there might be a way of maybe taking a look at it. But right now, I don't see that as something that the legislature, I'm sure somebody will file a bill to do it, but how far it gets, I don't know.
Well, okay, and you said some education on the governor, on the federal money that comes in. I mean, that's our tax dollars.
They are, I agree.
And shouldn't there be some
Here's the thing.
understanding of
Here's the thing.
coming
on
back to us?
high-speed rail. I mean, high-speed rail. It was what, $2 billion he turned
Yeah.
down or something like that. What was it gonna cost us after that, based upon the return on investment? And in other words, we accepted that $2 billion. What would the obligation of the state been after that? I think that's one of the things you have to look at. Particularly in the area of transportation, we are a donor state, no question about it. I'm sure John Micah came here many times and told you, how much we took in and how much Florida got back. And it never equaled a dollar for a dollar. And it still doesn't, by the way, it still doesn't. I'm for making sure that we get every dollar we can, but I also don't want to obligate the state, the federal government, even if Republicans were in charge, I think have a tendency to dump on states, just like the county governments think the state's dumping on them, or school boards. I remember when I was on the school board, I hated the legislature because they didn't give us enough money. And now I think the federal government's the same way. I mean, it sounds good going into the Medicaid thing. They're going to pay 100% for the first 3 years, then they're going to go to 90%. But what beyond that, Margot? I don't know. And that's what I worry about in terms of obligating the state down the road. I would rather see us, kind of like what Romney's doing, give us the money and let us create the best program for the most people.
Okay.
You get a point there with the Medicare payments plus the high-speed rail payments. There are future, it's an
Medicaid.
IOU to the federal government that may not be able to be paid
Right.
ever.
Yeah.
They're having their own
Right.
crisis right now.
Oh, yeah. Is that right?
So that's just a comment on the question.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna come back to the personal injury protection. Changes. What do you think that's gonna, what's the impact?
Well, the numbers I saw from the Chief Financial Officer, Jeff Atwater's office, was 7 to 10% in terms of decreases, actual help. I think that would be a help. I mean, I think anything at this point in time where you can put more money back in the pockets of people would be helpful, because they'll go out and hopefully go out and spend it in some way to boost the economy. But the bottom line is, Ron, we're gonna look at it, and if it doesn't do what we said it was gonna do, then we're gonna go back and look at some more opportunities to decrease it, because clearly fraud and abuse in that area was rampant. I mean, chiropractic, you may have friends who are chiropractors, but they were clearly chiropractic clinics that were just eating the whole $10,000 deal, by referrals and by false medical reports and things like that. We had good testimony in that area. So I frankly didn't think we went far enough in terms of some of the legal things we could have done. But I'm one senator, but I believe we can do more in that area. Frankly, I think we can do more in tort reform generally, by the way. Whether it's healthcare or small businesses, we need to take another look at that. I think some of the new senators we have coming in, there's going to be more of maybe a opening to do that, frankly. We're losing, by the way, we're going to have 15 new senators, and I mean, I'm not counting myself as coming back. I'm counting myself as coming back, and I don't mean to be ambitious about that, but I mean, there will be 15 new senators based on just open seats, which is the largest number I've ever seen in a long, long time from around the state.
My last question is, state and your views on immigration, very controversial issue. States across the nation have implemented
I kind
stringent
of
things.
the Jeb Bush, feeling about that. I think our tone is kind of harsh. I think the federal government has to secure the borders. They seem to have done that. I mean, it seems to be doing that along with the states. I did argue for the E-Verify law that I still think is probably something that businesses ought to take a look at. Maybe it ought to be done on the federal level, and so it's not a big impact on them from an economic standpoint. But I don't believe that we ought to go out and find and round up immigrants and ship them out. I mean, I think those that have been here, those that have families, those that are kids that are being productive, we ought to make sure we try to find a pathway to citizenship. So I think our tone has been a little harsh on that, and I think hopefully we can find a pathway to creating opportunities for every single citizen who's here and get them into the citizenship arena in some way.
The governor ran, that was one of his big issues. He hasn't done anything on it, but he would be quite a bit to the right of you on that.
He supported the E-Verify, obviously, initially in terms of, he created the executive order that did it on the state level. And again, I think if we could find a pathway, I think Marco, guys like Marco and Jeb Bush and the governor of New Mexico, all of those kind of people that are Hispanic or have related to Hispanic folks, they're the ones who really see this on a personal level. And I think that we've taken it probably as Republicans a little too far in terms of the actual issue. There obviously are human aspects to all of this, and I don't want illegals here that are violating our laws or doing things like that. But I do think we got to figure out a better pathway to get them to citizenship, and certainly you start by securing the borders and making sure that we don't create new folks coming in that are going to be problems for us down the road. But we got a lot of strength and a lot of good people who are looking at it, and I think that hopefully we can find some good solutions for everybody.
Well, John, we certainly appreciate your time with us today.
Always good to see you.
If you'd like to make a closing statement, you're welcome to do so.
No, I appreciate your time, all four of you, as always. And Margo, I wish you the very best in your retirement, and Godspeed.
Thanks.
I look forward to joining you in a few years.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.